if we have a listener out there who hasn't contributed to scikit-learn before, but they have some idea about a new feature that they'd like to add or some change that they'd like to make, how should they get started? And in particular, my understanding is that good documentation is critical.
Good documentation is critical. It's hard. It requires didactic skills. It requires good wording in English. It requires to be able to say complex things in a simple way. And there are many aspects to it, right? It could be improving a layout somewhere. It could be improving the structure of a document. It could be improving an example. We try not to add examples. We have enough, or we try to refrain in adding too many examples. We clearly have a reviewing bottleneck. I think this is something fundamental. We're seeing GitHub Copilot. We're seeing that it becomes easier to write code that looks okay. And the problem is, knowing that it's okay. And that's actually harder. Reading code is harder than writing code. For documentation, I'm very happy to announce that a few months ago, we created a documentation team that can review documentation pull requests. So this has allowed us to lighten up our backlog of reviewing. And actually, so for people who like explaining things and who want to contribute, which is absolutely crucial, there's actually a way forward, which is not only submit pull requests, but it's much easier today to get in the documentation team than to get in the developer team. Much easier, and it requires different skill set. So I see really an opportunity of growth for scikit-learn here. It's happening, and I'm really excited about it.
Nice, yeah. So you're saying that there is this parallel opportunity. So not only can people be contributing code, so these people who are on the documentation team, they might not necessarily have a coding background. Maybe they could have a technical writing background.
Yeah, of course. And coding backgrounds are overrated. I studied physics. We have someone in the team who studied biology. It's not about the background. It's about the affinity. I think people, they can be data scientists. You probably need to have some understanding of from a user perspective. But the kind of technical skills that you need from a developer perspective are different. They're about software architecture, they're about numerical stability. And so now we have a way forward for people who don't have those super advanced numerical coding skills to progress in the project. And I think that's crucial because as the project has gotten bigger and more technical, there was a danger that we would become too technical, that all of the people reviewing pull requests were really good in data structures, but not in wording in English. And so our goal is to create this spectrum of opportunities for different people with different skills.
Awesome. And then so for people out there who maybe me just suggesting this for the first time is something that they should possibly be interested in, getting involved in an open source project like a scikit-learn project. There's a core team that does this full time. Actually, so that's kind of an interesting way to go. There's obviously a core team that does this full time, and then there's also people who there's thousands of people that contribute just voluntarily. Why should somebody think about contributing voluntarily to an open source project like scikit-learn? So that's question number one. And then the question that follows from that naturally is then for somebody who maybe has already been doing that for a while and would like to make the jump to being a full-time scikit-learn developer, how do you do that?
So why would you contribute to something like scikit-learn? Well, historically, most people were doing this, quote unquote, to scratch an itch. So there's something that in the project that you'd like to improve. That's the biggest motivation. It works really well. It gives the right kind of feedback loop. Now, if you want to do this, it's really important that you first start to talk to other people, other users, and other contributors to know whether this aligns with the kind of vision that is shared across the project. We're currently trying not to grow too much because a project that grows too much basically collapses. We're focused on not always adding new estimators, but rather improving the ones we have and worrying about the full pipeline, inspection, maybe parallel computing, data ingestion, facilitating what we have often. And then, there's the whole process of, discussing this online with an issue, contributing code. And then, it's a social thing, for the better or the worse, but it's a social thing. There are many dozens of people interacting on this project, and the central people have a resource allocation problem. They have too many requests for help and review. And so, for the better or the worse, they're going to allocate their time where they think that there is going to be a positive feedback, a useful feedback for the project. And so what really happens, in terms of if you're really passionate about this and you want to get involved, I suggest figuring out what's useful for the core developers for the project, helping there. And as you help there, you progressively understand better the dynamics, and you progressively more and more useful. And you're basically moving up the ladder of skills, but you become known to the project. Now that's a slow process, and if at some point you wanna become more full-time on this, well, typically by this point, you have the network, you should be talking to us. It's a struggle from our side to, balance the funding, balance all the different opportunities, because the core people in the project are working in very different settings. We have people working for startups or big companies in the US or universities all across the world. We have funding that comes from partnership, from government funding. As all large operations, we're struggling with this. But if we have somebody who's talented and excited about the project, and we're able to identify this, we're always happy. And maybe one last thing, every once in a while, we organize sprints. And some of those sprints are onboarding sprints. And we're especially careful to organize onboarding sprints for people who are historically underrepresented in the community. And that's something important. We will invest more time here because we need to correct, this off balance. And that's just a great way of becoming involved in the project. And we try really hard to be very friendly and welcoming. And I think often we succeed.
Nice. Well, that is probably a reassuring thing to hear, because there's probably listeners out there who come from a background that is underrepresented in data science. And so to hear that there's this deliberate support for these people, and that it's a friendly thing, that it's not because I think it can be kind of an intimidating, I don't know, can't think of the right word, like an intimidating block, like an intimidating monolith to kind of look at from a distance to see, oh, this GitHub repository, and to see all this activity and how do I get started. So I guess for people in general, but then maybe for underrepresented groups in particular, you talked about getting started in a place where there is the most need. How do you identify that? How can a listener identify where there's the most need?
That's super hard. I mean, we struggle ourselves. We have a big, information management problem. We tag issues, help needed. The problem is the minute we tag an issue, help needed, somebody wants to work on that issue. And the easy ones, the ones that are help needed and easy, those get done immediately. So I'm not being very helpful here. And to be honest, if you want to get started, maybe the easiest thing is not to get started in scikit-learn, is to get started in other simpler projects that allow you to understand the kind of dynamics, the GitHub dynamics, the reviewing dynamics and everything. I'm passionate about open source. I was passionate about open source. I realized It's hard to get started in scikit-learn these days. I don't want people to give up. I think people should be passionate about open source, and it's a process. You get started by little thing, and you understand things better. So I don't have a good answer to this.
Well, and so then, I mean, this kind of puts you on the spot, and sometimes it's tough to come up with an answer like this immediately. But then, if there is some other open source project or projects that have a simpler ecosystem today that a listener should maybe consider getting started on, do you have any particular recommendations?
Well, I'm entirely biased, of course. I'm going to pitch, the project I'm excited about these days. It's about smaller code base. It's about smaller group of people. It's really hard when you have literally hundreds of people to kind of remember who is who. And so, so recently we've started a project that we call Scrub, SKRUB. Which is for data preparation before scikit-learn, typically data frames. I'm super excited about it. It's not even been released. It's out there on the internet. It actually has a code that has a longer history, so it's not an empty shell. It has a lot in it. And here it's easier to get started. Now, of course, I'm pitching my own project. I'm sure there are other projects.